Cade Horton exited his second major league start for the Chicago Cubs in the second inning against the Cleveland Guardians. The right-hander, who had retired the first 4 batters he faced, threw a 95 mph fastball to Steven Kwan, then immediately signaled to the dugout, clutching his right shoulder. Manager Craig Counsell and a trainer quickly converged on the mound. After a brief discussion, Horton walked off the field under his own power, but visibly frustrated, heading directly down the tunnel. The Cubs announced his departure was due to right shoulder discomfort. Hayden Wesneski entered the game in relief with 1 out in the second. The Guardians, initially stifled by Horton, immediately capitalized on the bullpen change. In the top of the third, Cleveland erupted for 5 runs. Andrés Giménez singled to lead off the inning. Tyler Freeman followed with a walk. Josh Naylor then drove a 2-run double into the right center gap, scoring both runners and giving the Guardians a 2-0 lead. David Fry singled, moving Naylor to third. Bo Naylor then hit a sacrifice fly, bringing Naylor home. Estevan Florial singled, and Steven Kwan doubled to score Fry and Florial, extending Cleveland's advantage to 5-0. The early injury to Horton directly preceded the Guardians' offensive explosion. Horton's early departure forced the Cubs' bullpen into action far sooner than anticipated, fundamentally altering Chicago's pitching strategy for the night. Hayden Wesneski, thrust into a high-leverage situation, struggled to contain the Guardians' suddenly aggressive lineup. Cleveland's hitters, facing a parade of relievers, found their rhythm quickly, turning a scoreless game into a 5-run deficit for the Cubs in a single inning. The immediate cost for Chicago was not just the runs allowed, but the loss of a promising young arm from their rotation. Horton, a top prospect, had shown flashes of brilliance in his brief major league debut, and his absence creates an immediate void. The Cubs' pitching staff has already been stretched thin this season, battling injuries and inconsistent performances from established starters. This new development places additional strain on a bullpen that was already logging significant innings. The Guardians, meanwhile, maintained their offensive pressure. In the 4th inning, José Ramírez singled, advanced on a wild pitch, and scored on a single by David Fry, pushing the lead to 6-0. Cleveland was relentless, adding another run in the 5th when Steven Kwan singled, stole second, and scored on a single by Andrés Giménez. The score stood 7-0 after 5 innings, a direct consequence of the early pitching change. The Guardians' offensive surge against the Cubs' bullpen was a clinical display of capitalizing on opportunity. After Horton's exit, Cleveland's hitters adjusted rapidly to the new arms. Josh Naylor's 2-run double in the 3rd inning was the decisive blow, turning a potential tight contest into a runaway. Naylor, who has been a consistent power threat for Cleveland, drove a fastball from Wesneski deep into the outfield, demonstrating the Guardians' ability to hit for extra bases when needed. The subsequent singles from David Fry, Estevan Florial, and Steven Kwan kept the line moving, forcing Wesneski to throw 30 pitches in the inning. This sustained pressure is a hallmark of the Guardians' offense, which leads the American League in runs scored. Their approach was simple: make contact, put the ball in play, and exploit any defensive lapses. The Cubs, conversely, struggled to generate any offense against Guardians starter Tanner Bibee. Bibee, who entered the game with a 3.65 ERA, was dominant from the outset. He retired the first 9 Cubs batters he faced, mixing his fastball and slider effectively. Chicago's lineup could not string together hits, managing only 1 runner in scoring position through the first 5 innings. The contrast in offensive execution was stark. Tanner Bibee delivered a statement performance for the Guardians, completely shutting down the Cubs lineup through 6 scoreless innings. Bibee allowed just 3 hits, walked none, and struck out 7 batters, showcasing the form that has made him a cornerstone of Cleveland's rotation. His fastball velocity sat consistently in the mid-90s, complemented by a sharp slider that generated 5 swings and misses. Bibee's efficiency was notable, needing only 85 pitches to navigate his 6 frames. On the offensive side, José Ramírez continued his MVP-caliber season, going 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs. His single in the 5th inning drove in Steven Kwan, extending Cleveland's lead to 7-0. Ramírez's consistent production has been a driving force behind the Guardians' success, providing both power and clutch hitting. Josh Naylor's 2-run double in the 3rd was the game's biggest hit, providing the initial separation. Stephen Kwan also had a productive night, reaching base 3 times with 2 hits and a walk, scoring 2 runs. For the Cubs, the offensive struggles were widespread. Cody Bellinger went hitless in 4 at-bats. Seiya Suzuki managed 1 single but was otherwise quiet. The Cubs finally broke Bibee's shutout bid in the 8th inning against reliever Nick Sandlin, with Ian Happ hitting a 2-run home run, but by then, the game was well out of reach. The immediate concern for the Chicago Cubs now shifts entirely to Cade Horton's prognosis. Right shoulder discomfort is a phrase that sends shivers through any baseball organization, especially for a top pitching prospect making his way in the majors. The team will await further evaluation, including imaging, to determine the severity of the injury and a potential timeline for his return. His absence, even if short-term, will test the depth of a Cubs rotation that has already seen its share of challenges, including injuries to Justin Steele earlier in the season. Manager Craig Counsell will need to piece together starts, potentially relying more heavily on veterans like Kyle Hendricks or calling up other minor league arms from Triple-A Iowa. This injury could significantly impact the Cubs' aspirations in a competitive National League Central, where they are currently battling for a wild card spot. A prolonged absence for Horton would force the front office to consider external options as the trade deadline approaches. For the Cleveland Guardians, the victory solidifies their position atop the American League Central standings, now holding a comfortable lead over the Kansas City Royals. Their offense, which has been remarkably consistent and opportunistic, showed its ability to explode against a vulnerable bullpen. Tanner Bibee's dominant outing further reinforces the strength of their starting rotation, which continues to be a major asset. Cleveland will look to carry this momentum into their next series against the Toronto Blue Jays, aiming to extend their division lead and maintain their impressive home record. The Cubs, meanwhile, must regroup quickly, hoping for positive news on Horton while facing the Milwaukee Brewers in a crucial divisional matchup that could define their season's trajectory.